It's time again for another installment of The Basics, and I'm back into the Star Trek CCG for this episode because I want to talk about something that's been going on in the game since almost the very beginning that I've completely forgotten about, and that, of course, is redshirting. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'm going to explain it to you, so stick with me and let's do this, shall we? Now, you practically see no redshirting nowadays in the Star Trek CCG, but when the game first came out in 1994, and almost to the end of the 90s, there were a lot of people redshirting. I used to see friends do it in house games. I did it the occasional time, not as much as most people, but I am guilty of it. You saw this happen a lot at card shop tournaments, and even some regionals that were leading into championships, and it was a huge problem that even Decipher acknowledged. And when new expansions started coming out towards the end of the 90s, there were cards that kind of negated a lot of redshirting. But I don't want to say it doesn't happen anymore, but it was a huge problem. So I have a Klingon deck out, and I'm going to illustrate what redshirting is. Now, redshirting can happen with any affiliation. And no matter if you have a ship with high staffing requirements or low staffing requirements, which is what I'm using here, when you're starting out in the game, you're maybe 8 or 9 turns in, you have a ship out that can move easily, you have maybe 5 or 6 personnel on it, and you're getting into attempting missions. But you know that there's going to be some nasty dilemmas under the missions. So what redshirting is, and this is more with a planetary mission when you can beam people down. You don't see it a lot for ship missions, but this is how redshirting works. You pull up to the mission with your ship, and you see what's on there, and you have a couple personnel that have the bare requirements that can start attempting that, but they happen to be your best personnel on the ship. So what redshirting is you look through the personnel on your ship, you look through what's there, and you see who the weakest personnel is that you can beam down just to see what that first dilemma is. In Klingons, especially in the original sets, like Unlimited and through Alternate Universe and Q Continuum, the personnel were weak. And what happened a lot, at least for the Klingons, and if you play Federation, you know there's a ton of weak personnel in the first bunch of sets. Klingons had the Targ, and this is what was being used as a red shirt a lot. So basically, you beam your Targ down to that mission, not to even attempt the requirements on the mission. You beam it down to flip over the first dilemma. And in this case, the dilemma is microvirus. Kills one away team member, opponent's choice, unless medical and security present. Discard dilemma. Your opponent has no choice but to choose the Targ because it's the only person there. The dilemma goes bye-bye. That is one dilemma automatically gone. That is the essence of redshirting. You are avoiding starting the mission by sending one personnel down who's complete crap to test out some of the dilemmas. Now, it doesn't work for every dilemma. It has to work for a dilemma that can be discarded right away, possibly has an extra point box or not. Anything cumulative doesn't work. And as I mentioned, Federation had a lot of weak background personnel that were universal in the first few sets as well. And this is where the problem started. People were unsure of the dilemmas. They didn't want to waste what I call their heavy hitting personnel with all the massive attributes and the same ones that can help their ships move. So they'd send down Ensign Redshirt or whoever and kill them off to get that dilemma out. And that was a huge problem. Redshirting was a means to test the dilemmas, but at the same time, it's very wasteful, if you look at it that way. I'm actually glad when cards came out to stop it from happening, or at least slow it down, because too many people were doing it. And, you know, it's kind of a cheap way to play the game, if you ask me. A couple of the other ways that redshirting happened is, especially if you were playing Federation or had an affiliation that had shuttlecraft like Cardassian or Bajoran, you'd take one of those runabouts or shuttlecraft or whatever they were, you'd put a couple crap personnel with bare requirements for the mission, send it to that location, and if something happened where it destroyed the ship or killed the people on the ship, oh well, it's only a runabout or a shuttle. The other way would be beaming down 3 or 4 people to a planet mission that had bare bones attributes on each personnel. So pretty much your landing party would consist of universal personnel that might be able to complete the mission but in no way get past the dilemmas. It was a huge problem, and I'm glad you hardly see that nowadays because it was a pain in the ass. That's all for today. Have a great day, everybody.